On my anniversary, my family took me to a shabby diner, handed me a note that basically said I was a failure, and mocked me to my face, so I quietly left. 5 days later, they were flooding my phone in complete panic. I never thought my 10th wedding anniversary would end with me walking out of a greasy diner while my entire family laughed at what they called my pathetic life choices. But here I am, 5 days later, watching my phone buzz with increasingly frantic messages from the same people who thought humiliating me was appropriate dinner entertainment. The whole thing started when my wife suggested we celebrate our anniversary with a family dinner. I should have known something was off when she picked Tony's Diner, a place where the vinyl seats have duct tape patches and the coffee tastes like it was brewed last week. We'd celebrated every anniversary at nice restaurants before, but she insisted this would be more meaningful. My parents, my two brothers, my sister, and my wife's parents all showed up. The moment I walked in, I noticed the weird energy. Everyone kept glancing at each other with these knowing smirks, like they were all in on some inside joke. My wife kept fidgeting with her purse, and my mother-in-law had this satisfied expression that made my stomach turn. We ordered our food, burgers and fries all around, because apparently that's what my marriage deserved, and I tried to make normal conversation. I talked about work, mentioned how well my consulting business was doing, brought up the vacation we'd been planning. Every comment was met with these patronizing nods and barely concealed eye rolls. Then my wife reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. She slid it across the sticky table with this theatrical flourish, announcing that the family had gotten together to write me something special for our anniversary. Everyone leaned forward with anticipation, phones already out to record my reaction. I opened the envelope and found a single sheet of paper covered in different handwriting. It was a list, a detailed, itemized list of everything they considered wrong with my life. My failure to get a traditional corporate job, my obsession with my hobbies, my inability to provide the lifestyle my wife deserved, my selfish decision to wait before having kids, my immature spending on things I enjoyed. But it wasn't just criticism. It was cruel. They'd written about how embarrassed they were to explain my career to their friends, how my wife had to settle for anniversary dinners at chain restaurants instead of five-star establishments, how I was holding back the family's reputation. The final line, written in my mother's careful script, said I needed to grow up and stop being such a disappointment to everyone who loves you. I looked up to find 12 pairs of eyes watching me expectantly. My father asked if I understood what they were trying to tell me. My brother chimed in that it was time for some tough love. My wife explained that they'd all been talking and decided this intervention was necessary for my own good. Then they started laughing. Not cruel laughter exactly, but the kind of amused chuckling you'd give a child who'd done something silly. My mother-in-law commented that my shocked expression was precious. My sister said she'd never seen someone look so confused by obvious truths. My wife patted my hand and told me not to take it so seriously. They were just trying to help me become a better person. I folded the paper carefully and put it back in the envelope. I told them I needed a moment to process this thoughtful gift. Then I stood up, walked to the counter, paid for everyone's meals, and left without another word. The silence in my car was deafening. I drove home, packed a bag, and checked into a hotel. I needed space to think, and I definitely needed space from people who thought public humiliation was an appropriate anniversary present. For 5 days, I ignored their calls and texts. The messages started apologetic. They were just trying to help. Maybe they'd been too harsh. Could we talk about it? But I wasn't ready to talk. I was busy. See, here's what my loving family didn't know about my failing consulting business. 3 months ago, I'd been approached by a major tech company about acquiring my client management software. The same software I'd been developing during those selfish hobby hours they'd mocked. The same software that had been generating steady income while I built my client base. I'd been keeping the negotiations quiet because I wanted to surprise my wife on our anniversary. The deal was worth $2.3 million up front, plus royalties. I'd planned to tell her over champagne at the nice restaurant I'd originally booked before she insisted on the diner. Instead of celebrating, I spent those 5 days in my hotel room finalizing the contract with my lawyer. I also made some other important calls. I contacted a divorce attorney just to understand my options. I called a real estate agent about getting my own place. I even reached out to a few headhunters about corporate positions in other cities, just to see what was available. By day 3, the messages from my family were getting more urgent. My wife was asking where I was staying and when I was coming home. My mother was insisting we needed to have a mature conversation about what happened. My brothers were calling me dramatic and telling me to stop overreacting. Day 4 brought panic. My wife had apparently driven by my office and discovered I hadn't been there all week. She'd called my business partner, who told her I was handling some important contract negotiations. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know what kind of contracts I was working on and why I wasn't answering my phone. On day 5, the acquisition went through. The money hit my account that afternoon. That evening, I finally answered my wife's call. She was crying before I even said hello. She begged me to come home so we could talk about what happened at the diner. She admitted they'd gone too far and said everyone felt terrible about how they'd handled things. She promised it would never happen again and pleaded with me to forgive them. I told her I'd received an interesting business opportunity and needed to discuss some changes with her. I suggested we meet at a nice restaurant, the same one I'd originally booked for our anniversary. She agreed immediately, probably relieved that I was finally talking to her. The next evening, I arrived at the restaurant first and requested our usual corner table. When my wife walked in, she looked nervous but hopeful. She dressed up and brought flowers, clearly expecting this to be a reconciliation dinner. I waited until after we'd ordered to tell her about the acquisition. I explained how I'd been working on this software for 2 years, how the negotiations had been ongoing for months, and how I'd wanted to surprise her with the news on our anniversary. I described the exact amount of money now sitting in my personal business account. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, calculation, and finally a kind of desperate excitement. She started talking rapidly about how proud she was, how she'd always believed in my work, how sorry she was about the dinner. She reached across the table and grabbed my hands, telling me she loved me and wanted to celebrate this amazing achievement. I pulled my hands away gently and told her I'd spent the last week thinking about our marriage. I explained that I'd realized some fundamental things about how she viewed me and our relationship. The fact that she'd orchestrated that humiliation, that she'd been discussing my failures with both our families behind my back, that she'd been embarrassed by the life we'd built together. She tried to interrupt, to explain that she'd just been frustrated and that everyone had gotten carried away. She insisted that she'd never really meant any of it, and that she was proud of what I'd accomplished. She promised things would be different now that she understood how successful my business really was. I told her that was exactly the problem. Her apology was contingent on my financial success. Her respect for me had a price tag. Her love apparently came with conditions I'd been failing to meet. I explained that I'd already consulted with a divorce attorney and that I'd be filing papers within the week. The acquisition money was mine alone since I'd developed the software before our marriage and kept the business separate from our joint finances. I'd be fair about splitting our other assets, but I was done with a marriage where my worth was measured by my bank account. She started crying again, begging me to reconsider. She said she'd been stupid and that she'd make it up to me. She promised to tell everyone in both families how wrong they'd been and how successful I really was. She offered to post about my achievement on social media so everyone would know how proud she was of me. I told her that was exactly what I didn't want. I didn't need her to rehabilitate my reputation with people who'd thought it was acceptable to mock me in public. I didn't want their respect now that it came with dollar signs attached. The rest of our families found out about the divorce and the acquisition simultaneously when my wife called her mother from the restaurant parking lot. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing with messages from everyone who'd been at that diner. My father called to congratulate me on my business success and to say he'd always known I had potential. My mother texted that she was proud of my entrepreneurial spirit and had never doubted my abilities. My brothers wanted to know if I needed any help managing my new wealth. My sister suggested we all get together to celebrate my achievement properly. My mother-in-law left a voicemail explaining that they'd all just been concerned about my happiness and had never meant to hurt my feelings. My father-in-law sent a text about how he'd always respected my work ethic and business acumen. I didn't respond to any of them. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since I filed for divorce, and the family drama has reached levels I didn't think were possible. My wife has apparently told everyone that I'm having some kind of breakdown and that the acquisition money has gone to my head. She's been calling my business partner, my lawyer, and even my clients, trying to convince them that I'm not thinking clearly. My mother showed up at my hotel yesterday with a casserole and a lecture about how successful men need strong family support systems. She sat in the lobby for 3 hours waiting for me to come to my senses and agree to family counseling. When I finally came downstairs, she told me that my wife was just overwhelmed by my sudden success and needed time to adjust to our new circumstances. My brothers have been tag-teaming me with phone calls about how I'm throwing away a good marriage over a misunderstanding. They keep emphasizing how rare it is to find a woman who'll stick with you through the lean years, conveniently forgetting that my wife had been planning to humiliate me during those same lean years. The most surreal part is how they've all rewritten history. According to them, that dinner was never meant to be cruel. It was a loving intervention that just came out wrong. They claimed they were trying to motivate me to reach my full potential, and look how well it worked. I should be thanking them for pushing me toward this success. My wife's strategy has evolved too. She stopped apologizing and started making demands. She wants half the acquisition money, claiming that her emotional support during the development years makes her entitled to the profits. Her lawyer has been sending threatening letters about spousal contributions to business assets. What she doesn't know is that I documented everything. I kept records of every conversation where she complained about my work, every time she suggested I get a real job, every instance where she expressed embarrassment about my career choices. I also have the original note from the diner, which I photographed before leaving that night. My lawyer says we have a strong case for keeping the acquisition money separate, especially since I can prove she actively discouraged the work that led to it. The software development happened during hours she considered wasted time, using equipment she wanted me to sell, in a home office she wanted to convert to a guest room. Update 2. 3 weeks post-divorce filing, and I've made some decisions that have sent my family into complete meltdown mode. I accepted a position with a tech company in Seattle, not because I need the job, but because I want a fresh start somewhere nobody knows about my failure to meet their expectations. I also bought a house. Not just any house. A beautiful craftsman-style place with a dedicated office space and a workshop where I can continue developing software. I sent pictures to my wife as part of the asset disclosure process, and she apparently had a complete breakdown when she realized how much money I'd been quietly accumulating. The family response has been predictable. My parents are furious that I'm running away, instead of working through our problems like an adult. My siblings are accusing me of being vindictive and selfish. My wife's family is threatening legal action over everything from the acquisition money to the anniversary dinner receipts I paid for. But the most telling reaction came from my wife herself. She showed up at my hotel with my mother-in-law and my sister, demanding to know why I was punishing everyone for trying to help me improve myself. She actually said that if I'd just listened to their advice and gotten a corporate job earlier, I could have been making this kind of money years ago. I told them that was exactly the point. They'd never believed in what I was doing. They'd never supported my vision or trusted my judgment. They'd been embarrassed by my choices right up until those choices made me wealthy, and now they wanted credit for my success. My sister tried a different approach, suggesting that maybe I was being too sensitive about what was obviously meant as constructive criticism. She pointed out that families are supposed to be honest with each other, even when that honesty is uncomfortable. I asked her if she'd ever received a list of her personal failures as an anniversary gift. I wondered if her husband's family had ever taken her to a cheap restaurant to mock her life choices while recording her reaction. She got quiet after that. My mother-in-law played the victim card, crying about how I was destroying 2 families over a simple misunderstanding. She claimed that everyone had just been worried about my happiness and financial security. She insisted that if I'd just explained about the acquisition earlier, none of this would have happened. That's when I realized the fundamental disconnect. They still didn't understand that the money wasn't the issue. The issue was that they'd thought it was acceptable to humiliate me publicly because they'd judged my life and found it lacking. The issue was that their respect and support came with conditions I'd been failing to meet. I told them I was moving to Seattle in 2 weeks and that I wouldn't be maintaining contact with anyone who'd been at that dinner. I explained that I needed to build relationships with people who valued me for who I am, not what I can provide for them. Update 3. I'm writing this from my new office in Seattle, looking out at the mountains and thinking about how much my life has changed in 6 weeks. The divorce was finalized last week. My wife got half of our joint assets, but none of the acquisition money. She's apparently telling everyone that I stole her financial security and abandoned my family responsibilities. The tech company I'm working with has been incredible. They're not just interested in the software I developed. They want me to lead a team developing similar solutions. It's the kind of corporate position my family always said I should pursue. Except now I'm doing it on my terms, with people who respect my expertise. I've been getting updates about the family drama through my business partner, who still lives in my old city. Apparently, my wife has been trying to date other entrepreneurs, specifically targeting men in tech. My brothers have been asking mutual friends about my salary and whether I'm planning to invest in any local businesses. My parents have been telling people that I'm going through a midlife crisis and will probably come back once I get this rebellion out of my system. The most interesting development is that my wife's family has been distancing themselves from her. Turns out, when you marry someone for their potential earning capacity and then publicly humiliate them for not earning enough, people start questioning your character. My mother-in-law apparently told someone at church that she'd always known I was ambitious and that my wife had been too impatient with my timeline. I haven't responded to any of their attempts at contact. My phone number changed when I moved, my social media accounts are private, and my new address isn't public information. I've built a life where my worth isn't constantly being evaluated and my choices aren't subject to family committee review. The funny thing is, I'm happier than I've been in years. I'm dating someone who knew nothing about my financial situation when we met. She was attracted to my passion for my work, not my bank account. I have friends who celebrate my successes without trying to take credit for them. I have a career that challenges me and colleagues who value my contributions. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if my family had just been proud of me that night. If they'd celebrated 10 years of marriage and acknowledged the hard work I'd been putting into building something meaningful. If they'd trusted that I knew what I was doing with my life and career. But then I remember that their reaction to my success told me everything I needed to know. They weren't proud of my achievement. They were relieved that I'd finally become someone they could respect. They didn't apologize for doubting me. They tried to take credit for motivating me. They didn't learn to value me for who I am. They just recalibrated their expectations based on my net worth. I'm building a life now where my value isn't negotiable and my worth isn't conditional. It's a life where anniversary dinners are celebrations, not interventions. Where family means support, not judgment. Where success is measured by happiness and fulfillment, not just by bank account balances. And honestly, that's worth more than any acquisition money could ever be.